Good afternoon, Indira. How are you?
Great. How are you, Anil?
Fantastic. Thank God it's Friday.
It does tend to be that way, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. I think I was thinking about it today. If we could have Groundhog Day on Fridays, I don't know if that's a good thing. If we would have a Groundhog Day on a Saturday, don't know what's the right day, but
Yeah.
um,
I love Fridays because it is when we record usually, and also it's a more creative day for me because I know others are winding down and they're less likely to want to talk about business development. So I can get into my creative developments and this is all part of it. So it's lovely. It's a great way to spend the day.
totally agree. Especially like Friday afternoon. I think Google is a company that recommends that its employees take 4 hours or 3 hours once a month, preferably on a Friday afternoon, and they use it just to ideate, to think of new things and brainstorm and yeah,
Mhm.
switch off almost and get ready for the weekend.
That's a great segue into our session for today, actually.
Indeed, it is. So for those that caught us last week, we spoke about the eight elements. Um, there are, sorry, so there are eight.
Yeah.
Creative visualization, intention, mindfulness, energy, contemplation, journaling, attunement, and meditation. And obviously, Indra, as you know, I just meditated before the session, so I can't wait to get to that session. But until then, creative visualization, which we chatted about last week, I thought was incredibly powerful. What did you think of it?
Well, it's our starting point, really. As I said at the time, it's really, if you think about the process of how we actually bring something from just a desire, a spark, down into a thought, into an intention, which we'll talk about today, into I'm actually going to do something about this and make it happen in my life, make it come into my reality, then creative visualization is essential. And I mean, in business, we're creating visions, missions, making statements about them. And without that ability to give yourself time and ask yourself the right questions, allow those creative impulses to come, business doesn't develop and it doesn't grow into what it could be in its own way as well. But there's a process for bringing that through, and that's what the eight elements are about. It's about our own self-mastery and having those tools to then be far more masterful in our leadership and self-leadership. And it's also a set of practices that help us stay deeply connected with our wisdom. And as you know, I talk about still mind, wise hearts, stilling the mind so it can focus on that inner wisdom, that inner guidance. The wise heart being able to speak and be heard because it's there anyway. It's not something that we can't connect with or can't find. It's part of us. And it often goes missing in business. I mean, that's what gets us frustrated and feeling like things are too superficial, etc. So this is it's a really powerful yet simple way, really, when you look at each of those elements. But when you practice them and you know the way to practice them in deeper, meaningful ways, you'll get far more out of them. And they are a practice. As you know, meditating once a week is not the same as what it does for you if you're meditating 6 or 7 days a week.
I wholeheartedly agree. And self mastery is a topic that we've had and discussed a few times. I think I think we need to be very clear about this is not some new age, hokey stuff. Like Indira, the work that you're doing and the people that you're having conversations with are leaders in business, individuals in business. And I think it's not underestimating how self-mastery can actually help people, not only personally, but also professionally. And I think again, when I think about creative visualization and how I apply it, again, I do it before an interview, I do it before a presentation, and I do it before an event. So um, I, I'm, I love the fact that we're having these conversations, but I really don't want folks to just misunderstand that this is just simply some light new age stuff. This is tangible.
No, it gives it such bad press because we do it naturally. We're doing it all day, every day. It's how we create our lives. We make choices, we go looking for them, we make them with our hands, but it all comes from something that's gone on inside us.
Which
Unless we're living someone else's life and then we're in danger.
which we can't do that. And I did chat with Fred about that earlier this week about not comparing ourselves. And on that note, I want to lead us into element number 2, intentions.
Right.
Just
Yes.
exactly to your point, making choices. So I want to start with a quote from your book. Intention is an energy you use to begin, to bring form to your physical world, and to set the wheels in motion to create it. Intention gets behind the goal of your higher purpose and enlivens it with the will from your own heart's connection with divine will. Powerful.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
And
Okay, yes.
exactly. Yes. So Indira, from in your words, in terms of what you meant by that, tell us the value of setting intentions.
Well, let's get clear about what an intention is as well, because we can talk about, oh, I'd like to, I intend to sometime in the future. But intention is really about the energy that you put into, it's your will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's once you've worked out what it is that you really want and you've done your visualization and you know this is something I am willing to bring into my life, whether it's for me or for the good of others or both, then we've got to take that further. In order for it to take form, there needs to be some commitment behind it. And in coaching, you know, I will often ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to this right now? Because I need to know if their intent is there. So there's an intent to make this happen. And if we doubt and waver, we're going to mess up the messages to our whole unconscious system and ultimately our connection with consciousness anyway. So intention is, am I willing to say I'm absolutely going for this now? And there's no room for doubt anymore. I'll assess along the way and I'll use my discrimination and I will make choices along the way. But am I committed to this or not? Am I getting married or not? You know, because otherwise it's, oh, I could do this, I could do that, we're in limbo, and you know, life is just wishy-washy. So, and in business, we don't want that. This is high performance talk that we're having. So in order for working, you know, when I work with high performing individuals and they're looking to have to do things quickly, efficiently, and bring people along with them safely and creatively, then there is no room to be messing around with, am I committed to this or not? But that's why we do the work on the creative visualization first. And then we say, yes, we're clear about what we want, why we want it. We feel good about this. And then intention is to say, I'm actually prepared to start working towards getting this to be done. So an intention is not the goal. In essence, your creative visualization is really your goal. Your intention is the willpower that you're going to put in to it. So the intention for me really comes from your values. It's, what do I intend from this? So you might want something, or you might want to achieve something. Say you want greater good for the world, then you need to be then breaking that down into, what is it about the greater good for the world that matters to me? What's my intention with this? So I want to see things improve. I want my life to improve. I want other people's lives to improve. That's an intention. I'm doing this as a strategy for ensuring that my intention becomes real. So that's that high level purpose, if you like, the higher level why, that says, you know, people say, oh, I want to be rich. I want $1 million. I want to have a very successful business, or I want to be in a very senior role. And then it's, so when you've got that, what will that give you? So that I start to hear their values. And I work with senior lawyers. I work with people who are very driven and directed by their work and don't have a lot of time to reflect. But when we start to ask those sorts of questions about what will that give you, their intention starts to become clear. So there's a couple of things around intention, is where will you put the energy of your willpower, but what are you intending to come from this? And that's not the goal. The goal might be $1 million or $1 billion, pounds. but the intention is help others create wealth, so we all live in an abundant world. So we're still back at the why, but if we don't get connected to that intention, we'll lose our way further down the track.
I find that incredibly powerful. I think, like you said, this is for high performing people. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that not everyone's high performing. You have
No,
to.
for everyone really, but in terms of applying it, I'm giving examples from high performance. Yeah.
No, but in a sense that I feel that there are people out there who want to be high performing, and there are others who don't want to be, and that's okay. Like, you can choose which way you want to go, and there's no right or wrong. It's what's best for you. I think, to your point, exactly. If you want to set clear intentions, and you're working with high performing individuals, they're going to want to make sure they're crystal clear in order for that willpower, the horsepower, is actually being done for the betterment, and it drives a higher purpose, and it drives towards their values, and it's not something that's disconnected or something that they don't truly understand.
Absolutely. And that's what then brings authenticity, because that's thrown around a lot in business, authentic leadership. So important to be authentic. And then we say, well, how do we do that on a daily basis? In these 5 minutes, how can I be sure I'm authentic? So authenticity for me is about lining up with that intention, knowing my values being spoken and being brought to life and respected. And then I can bring my intention to put my will behind it, and also being aware that you're working with a higher intention of the organization that you might be part of, the community you might be part of, but ultimately consciousness itself has its own intention. So working in conscious cooperation with those energies is where we really go when we start to do this in deep ways. And I can see you looking really curious.
No, well, I'm kind of, I want to know, just, well, no, again, I always go back to, it's a simple but very deep topic. And I
Yeah.
think, just to say, I set my intention, I write down on a piece of paper and I go into it. I have an intention to go get bread. Okay, great. Like, great intention, go get bread. If you have the intention of, I want to change lives, I want to make the lives of my employees better, I want to make, I want to create value with purpose. Again, setting those intentions, it's a similar practice, but with more to it. And that's actually why I want to ask you another question about, so the folks that you've worked with, how have they put setting clear intentions into practice?
Oh, I love that question. Because when I see it at work, I see the difference that it makes. And a really simple example is setting an intention for a meeting. Mm-hmm. When you go into the meeting, ask everybody there, what's our intention for this meeting? And be clear yourself on what it is for you. So it's not only what do we want to achieve from it, but it could be, my intention is for this to go smoothly and for everyone to feel supported and heard, and that we leave with very harmonious relationships at the end. Mm. It could be our intention is that we have a plan at the end and we know exactly what each person will be doing, and everyone feels responsible for their part in achieving that. So it's not just getting through the agenda, they're goals in a sense. Mm-hmm. They're steps, if you like. It's what do I want to see happen from this? Do I want to leave the world a better place than it was when I walked in the door 5 minutes before?
No, I'm with you. I want to, though, understand, when you've had conversations with folks and they come into a meeting, what's our intention here? Like, even when you and I sit down and we talk, what happens if either the person who sets the intention or the room where the intention is being shared lack the energy to bring that intention to life?
Well, if there's lack of energy, the intention isn't clear and it's not shared.
Okay.
because energy flows where you put your focus, and where you focus, your energy will flow. So if you can't commit or you're unclear, there's work to be done. And maybe the visualization isn't strong enough.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the thing we're aiming for isn't clear enough yet. Or there's a violation of values somewhere for people. And that's where I've done work with teams to find out what are each person's individual motivators, drivers, values, so that the team understands each other better and knows what to do to be inclusive. So this comes down to a lot of work around diversity and inclusion, actually. So intention, and what we can tell when someone's actually trying to sabotage. Their intent is to sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
We can tell when their intent is really goodwill and wanting to get something done. So you see how there's an energy and a motivation in the idea of intention.
Completely. And something we talked about last week when you do creative visualization, and now when you set intentions and you share intentions, tell me about the role of journaling.
Well, then I would write it down, because journaling helps me to then think about, well, what is my intention with this? When I say I'm going to be working on that, I also need to remember, what's this a strategy for? What's it going to lead to? So I will journal to ask myself questions around, but also to create focus and question my commitment to it. And also to then decide, what will I do about that? You know, like you've got to write down, well, this is the action I'm going to take if that's the case. And also, when people don't understand you or are in conflict with you and don't have the same mindset as you, your own intention needs to be strong. So I've used it in relationships, you know, like even with my own family members, sometimes before I've jumped on a call, it's been, well, let me just think for a moment, what's my intention for this call? I would love for us to have a really harmonious and joyful conversation. So if I have that intention, I personally will not want to bring into the conversation things that are going to work away from that harmony and joy. It's not the time to be talking about those things.
I agree.
If it's something I need to resolve, I may say, my intention for this is to feel resolved by the time I leave this conversation. Therefore, what will I do?
Just when you say that, again, it sounds so powerful. Like, my intention is to blank. Just, I want to, I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday, and I asked the question, what is it you want? And, got an answer. And, we were kind of, as I was kind of going through it with him, I was like, hang on a second, like, maybe the difference is not what you want, but it's what do you want right now? And so your intention could start with something that you want a month out, 6 months out, 12 months out, or to your point, it could be, what do I need? What do I want right now? This meeting, this call, this conversation.
Absolutely.
So it's something that doesn't have to sound complicated or difficult,
No.
right?
In fact, it's more simple. It's more simple.
Well, and the simpler it is, the clearer it is, and the easier it is to do. And then you're able to build on it, step by step, intention by intention.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
perhaps into a bigger intention that you're carrying.
Well, I mean, and ideally, it's, how little things ideally fit into like the bigger picture. And so if that happens, I think that's brilliant. That's whether you know it, or maybe it just suddenly you connect the dots and you see the bigger picture and you're like, oh, that worked out quite well, which could happen. Or it could work out the other way where you're like, these are pieces of a bigger puzzle that I'm trying to build as I go.
Yes.
What are some of the insights that either you or individuals you've worked with, professionals that you've worked with, in terms of setting intentions that you've maybe thought of or have come to light?
Well, the one that comes to mind actually is one of the real benefits of it is that I think when you work with intention, you're less impacted by previous situations, old beliefs, previous conditioning. And I've actually found that in setting an intention, it's like starting afresh. And it's easier to put aside the current conditions that you may not want, or you're wanting to improve on, and be less afraid. Last week we talked about how fear comes into this as well. So be less afraid of making the change. So when intention is clear, it's also very easy to start then setting the conditions. And that's where next time, we would talk more about mindfulness, is bringing the mind into this and thinking around this. But that's where we start to say, well, what are the conditions that need to be met in order for this intention to be met?
I love that. I just want to, so you're less impacted by previous, you're starting fresh. And I think you just mentioned, like, when you're having conversations on diversity and inclusion, something that's incredibly important at the moment, you set that intention, you're kind of letting go of what's been there in the past, and you're able to start fresh moving forward. I love the second one you mentioned in terms of you're less afraid of making the change. And it's funny how we're paralyzed by fear, but if you set that intention, you visualize it, and then you go into that room and you put it into practice and you share it with others with clarity, and that fear dissipates, and that strength and that conviction starts to take form. And I think, again, you don't have to be high performing for that to happen, but it could become a natural, instinctual kind of reaction. I think the third one, like you said, is like, you need to be aware of those conditions that need to be met. So you need to be crystal clear. Clarity, in my opinion, is critical for the success of your intention. Otherwise, like, you blind yourself, or you muddy up your RAS, and you're not going to be able to really hone in on what you're trying to get after. So I embrace that 100%. And I think, like you said, this isn't something that just appeals to someone individually. It can happen at work. It can happen in a relationship with a friend, a family, a partner. I think setting clear intentions, and you teed it up incredibly well, mindfulness.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next element that we
And
get
the mind has to come in, because the mind is then brought in to help make it happen, but also to ensure that you're staying connected. You're still in your hearts, really, with this work. What does the heart want? What does creative visualization? What do you really want? What's your highest and best intention with this, bringing your best self to work? And I was going to say too, Anil, in reply to what you were describing, is, can you imagine working for a leader who has strong intention? I've worked for a leader who has not had particularly clear or strong intention. And I'm, over the years, I'm saying a number of leaders where this has not shown up, but I've also seen the power of it when I have been around leaders who are incredibly clear. And it's not done then. It doesn't need to be, hacked away at, and it doesn't need to be slashed at, and it doesn't need to be done with force. It has power behind it, and people are naturally willing to be with you and go through it because they trust you. There's a real element of trust that gets built when you're working with a leader who's got incredibly strong and clear intention and can articulate that. And also wants to know what yours is.
No, I was just going to say, I think, so just on that, again, I could not agree with you more. I've worked with leaders whose intentions kind of, quote unquote, kind of go where the wind goes, where the wind blows. Not acceptable. So I want to bring this to two thoughts. One is to have a leader that's got clarity and clear intentions, and they're able to share that with you, and not only share that with you, but also bring you in the fold, and you're able to share that intention. I think you're going to move much faster, much stronger together to deliver a result. But then I go back to the second part, which is trusting yourself and having a clear intention within you. You'll rely on yourself more, you'll trust yourself more, and therefore you'll be, again, able to move much faster rather than feel like you're even resisting yourself within.
Yes. And doubt gets to be one of those things that doesn't happen real often, because that's already been put aside. When you get very lined up with what it is that is of the highest and best, what it is you truly want through your visualization, and you've done that exploration, and then you say, I'm prepared to commit to this. And I know absolutely why. The strength, I can feel it in my own body as I talk about it. Actually, it's even in my legs. It belongs in the body, like power starts to flow, and you can get on with it, and you can power your way through some pretty big challenges as well, because there will be some along the way. And it's something to come back to. So when you capture that in your journal, or you capture that on a whiteboard, or wherever you want to place it in the workplace as well, but you know for yourself what this intention is. And that's why it's really great to bring it down right to, okay, well, even when you're going out for a run, you might go out to buy bread, but what kind of bread? My intention is to feed my body really healthy things because I want vitality and I want to be strong. I want to live a long, happy life. That's your intention. So that means when I buy the bread, which bread am I buying? The white sugar, salty one, fat-filled one, or something that's going to be low GI and wholesome and easy to digest, energizing.
But again, it goes back to the intention to live a clean and
Exactly.
healthy
Yeah,
life.
yeah. Otherwise, you're dealing with addictions and conditioning and unconscious kind of responses. And the quickest way to put all that aside is to say, not only, sometimes what do I want is a difficult thing to answer, but if you say, what's my intention for me and my life? What's the quality of my life that I want to live? Then you start to get somewhere with what you want to actually choose for yourself. And it's amazing then how quickly things come to you and get matched up. And you do big leaps in terms of, I've known in my life, big leaps have happened in terms of 1 minute things are looking pretty dire. And you look back 3 months later and say, oh my God, look what happened. We're not even thinking about how it used to be. Suddenly everything is in great shape. So, and it's because you're signaling to the unconscious all the time and going into your energy goes where your focus goes.
Mm.
Energy flows to you as well because you're finding the match. You're finding and you're finding the positive flow. You're finding the abundance. Nobody really wants to choose anything negative or it's going to drag you down.
Mhm.
Unless you're really mean-hearted or self-destructive, we're not talking about that. That's why I'm saying that in essence, this is a high performance thing.
No,
This is how we move forward quickly and help to create great results and a greater place to work and be.
I agree. Indira, any closing thoughts on intentions before we get ready for next week and tee up mindfulness?
Um, no, not really. Just I think it is being more mindful of your intention, and then we'll talk about how to use the mind to support it. I would say go back and have a look at your values. What is it that matters most to you is probably a better question than what do I want. It's what matters to me most, and what do I want to put my intention behind, and then everything else is a strategy for getting there.
Love it. All right, Indira, thank you so much. I think that, just to recap from my side, I find setting intentions incredibly powerful. Um, Knowing my values, my five, knowing my purpose, one sentence, something I've shared on a previous cast. I think that it again allows you to make sure that those intentions are clear and you can share them
Yeah.
and not be embarrassed, not feel self-conscious. In fact, if anything, quite feel opposite. You feel quite confident and powerful with them.
Yes.
I really do appreciate this. And for those of you that are keen to understand Indira further, feel free to look at our website. I've included it, and reach out to her with any questions you have. I've benefited, and I hope you do too. Indira, until next week, thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks, Anil. See you soon.
Sounds great. Ciao.
Bye. Bye.